Thank you, Spirit, for joining us in this space. We come together with the prayer of getting out of the way and allowing you to speak through us. So thank you and Amen.
Greetings and welcome to episode 18 of Talking Spirit. My name is Elizabeth and I'm here once again with the lovely Yuta.
Hello.
So we come today in the fire of transformation. We're here to be divested of old ways of being. Yuta got to do the prayer today. I'm going to open us up, and we've brought with us our dear friend John. So say hello, John, if you would.
Hi, Yuta. Hi, Elizabeth. Great to be here.
So we're here, as always, for our own deep healing. And if there's something that becomes useful to others, it's because we did get out of the way and allow the Spirit to work through us. And that is, as Yuta said, that's our prayer. And so that's the platform for today. John is a bright light and a dear friend that I met about 20 years ago in 2004 at a painting retreat called Painting from the Source. We've mentioned that before. And he has been on his own spiritual journey, and we just felt inspired to bring him in to see what would come. And we weren't really sure what the topic would be, but it popped in really loudly for me last night, based on a lot of different things, but just to have it be the conversation of the transformation that happens on the spiritual path. John had said something to me and to Yuta about, well, why would you get on the path anyway? And for many of us, it's because we had no other choice. You know, it's a face plant in the world's terms. It's I'm miserable and unhappy and I want something different. It can sometimes be the urge to blow your life up and tear it all apart and tear it all down because you know that there's something more. Transformation can come to us through a seeming sickness, a death of a person. That's a big transformational symbol that a lot of people can identify with. So, you know, what does transformation mean to any of us? It might be different depending on what our journey is, but I know we all have massive stories of transformation. And if we're fortunate enough, we use those as a springboard for deeper healing and for knowing ourselves at the next level and for expanding into what the Spirit would have us be. So that's what comes to mind today for talking about transformation. And yeah, over to you, Yuta.
Thank you. Yeah, I think the first thing that pops into my mind, and that kind of popped in a bit earlier too, when I was thinking about transformation and fire, the fire kind of transformation, is that symbol of fire, which, you know, there's so many ways that we can look at fire. Like there's the fire of spirit, fireworks, a bonfire, and yeah, the fire of transformation is a beautiful symbol just by itself. And even looking at a bonfire, it is a very transforming thing. And I was just thinking about it earlier, you know, growing up and spending time in our garden and having bonfires in the summer, and kind of how the feeling would change. You know, we would get all the wood together and then finally light the fire, and it's like very exciting in the beginning stages. There's so much happening, it's crackling, right? And big flames and different colors. And then as the fire winds down a bit, or even, you know, as you start putting a bit more wood into the fire, something kind of happens just as you sit with the fire. At least for me, it's like this calming energy starts to replace that excitement. And I think the transformation on the spiritual journey is a bit similar, because it can be a little, you know, there can be pops and crackles in the beginning and lots of excitement. And I think as we get a little bit further along, it does calm down and feel a bit more centered, and contentment starts to really come in and things like that. Yeah, but I think for me, when I think about transformation, that's sort of what initially pops into my mind. Just the similarities to an actual fire with the transformation on the spiritual path.
Interestingly enough, when you said fire, the first thing that came into my mind was water. And I think that my transformation to me feels a little bit more like water, a slow wearing away and revealing, and more like the continual drip of consciousness over many decades, and a little bit less instantaneous than a fire might be. I can see, how a fire would represent transformation, but in my case, the unfolding has been slow and not a steady, straight line in any stretch of the imagination. I've had a lot of resistance, and as I spend more and more time in meditation and more time in looking at myself, the subtleties, kind of like the peeling of an onion, the subtleties of coming to know myself and to open to the universe, to the cosmos, spirit. It is really just a continual wearing away of the shell that I think was formed when I was young, and felt that, I needed to be what my parents wanted, what my teachers wanted, later on what my coworkers and partners wanted, and that shell was really hard, and it's taken many decades to let that thin and wear away and really allow me to come to my true self. So I think both fire and water are clearly forms of transformation, and I think it can be different for each of us.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you. I agree. I actually love the symbol of water as well, and it's a very powerful symbol. And yeah, in a lot of ways, I do feel the same way, actually.
Yeah, I really, it was bringing up for me all the kinds of ritual ceremony that Spirit has had me do over the years. And there does seem to be a little bit of a different elemental quality, you might say, to the different forms of ceremony. And for me, when I got into the Peruvian shamanism, there were tons of fire ceremonies. And it was necessary to have that kind of explosive, immediate, as you said, John, like get it hot and burning and burn this crap up, because this stuff is blocking, your path forward. So there was the need for that kind of power and potency. A lot. I did a lot of fire ceremonies to dump into the fire, dump in all of my sadness, all of my regrets, all my resentments, all of my worries, my fears, dump, 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 dump. And the power of fire to transmute that stuff was vital, really vital. And then there were times of going to do ceremony with the waters, to send out my prayers on the waters, or to ask the waters to wash away, the gunk that was still hanging on. So I love that both of those elements are coming in, because we do require at different times, it seems to me, different ways of having the spirit work with us for our transformation. It can't always be hot and fiery. You burn out, you burn up, you'd be toast. So there needs to sometimes be a more meandering kind of approach from the spirit. And as we talk about every time, it's kind of universal, the process, but the individual way it unfolds for us, is up to the spirit to determine for us. So anyway, that's what shows up for me.
I'm constantly amazed at how many of my ideas and my thoughts about how to be and how to act really were just given to me, and I haven't really had the chance to sit with them. As an example, giving something to someone, giving a gift to someone, or coming into a season of Christmas where giving a gift is becoming on everyone's mind. But for me, giving a gift was a generous thing. If you gave someone something, you were being a good person. And recently I had to sit with maybe there are the unintended consequences of giving a gift to someone. Maybe when you give a gift, you're actually in some way keeping them from what the universe had intended for them without your gift. And to sit with the reverse side of how I feel about giving as being a good thing without ever having contemplated it. The idea that, oh, maybe I have to think about it. Maybe giving isn't always a good thing. And on that really subtle level, again, the idea of water has worn away like all these notions that I had that, oh, I was operating in a certain way that was good. And now I have to see that, well, maybe even the idea of good is something that isn't so certain. Anyway, I don't know if that makes sense.
It does make sense. I love it because it's like, of course, like all of those kind of situations, like in your case with giving a gift, there's always a prayer underneath. I mean, maybe there isn't, but I would feel like, like once you kind of like start to feel like your whole life is your spiritual path, then at least for me, there is a prayer underneath, am I to be giving a gift, or should I even receive a gift, and it's so individualized, which that seems to be a theme, that's coming through as well today, that things are very individualized. And and just looking at all the beliefs, all the stuff we take on all the time, and especially from childhood, all of the stuff that we've taken on, the beliefs and assumptions, and ideas of good and bad and right and wrong, that's the kind of stuff that we end up throwing in the fire of the spirit, or the river, to be re-examined and undone and transformed. So yeah, I like that example, John.
Yeah, I mean, we don't really know the answer to those things unless we have been put through our paces, unless we've been tempered by the spirit. As we've said in other talks, we're just running a program. We're just running the world's thinking if we haven't been transformed from within to be realigned with the power that knows the greater workings. We kind of are beating a dead horse in a way with these themes at times, but it's like, yeah, I can't hear them enough. I've been going through this for many years in this life and for eons. It's just been a long journey, and it requires some pretty powerful energies to come to a place where we're not thinking we know anything about anything. For me, that's one of the biggest places I see transformation for myself, is when I'm not immediately responding, but I'm going, wow, I have no idea. I have no idea. I mean, for me to come to a place with anything in my life where I say, I really don't know, that's a massive symbol in my mind that there's been some deep transformation. And it's not a good or a bad or a right or a wrong. It's just like, wow, it's really different, because I was brought up with lots of people having lots of opinions, and not just sort of kind of having an opinion, having certainty about their opinion. And, you grow up in that kind of thinking, it becomes your way to navigate with people. You have to have your own big opinion about stuff, and so for me to ever have a pause in my thinking where I stop and go like, wow, do I have a clue about this? And spirit, what do you have to say about it? To have that be my response in any moment is miraculous. That is a sign of a lot of purification having happened, and yet there's still tons more. So this idea of like, I see people that are coaches or whatever at times, talking about transformation. And Spirit had that label at one point when I was playing with websites, transformation agent. I do seem to help people let go of stuff. I do kind of have a fire that comes on when Spirit works through me. But it's like, mm, it's this idea sometimes in the world's terms, like we're going to give you something that's going to transform you and then you're going to be done. And that's just not been my experience. You know, transformation is like an ongoing. And I've had this interesting meditation recently of like, am I ever stuck in the transformation versus being in more of a state of availability to be that transformation agent? And that's a whole different can of worms we could talk about some other time. But it's like, am I getting stuck in my transformation process rather than in my embodiment? Or am I stuck in this idea that I'm embodied, but I still have transformation to do? It's kind of this dance back and forth, in and out, in the fire, out of the fire, into the waters, back in the fire, you know, warm up, burn up, dry off, get back in. You know, it's like, it's a really dynamic journey.
Yeah.
And I often hear people like as if they've arrived. And I think, well, good on you. You know, I'm not sure that that happens while we seem to be in a body. I'm not sure anybody arrives. You know, what do I know about it? Apparently nothing, but you know, it's a deep question. So,
Yeah, it definitely is a dance. And yeah, I know for myself, there's definitely like it's like this not a swing necessarily, but more like, you know, this kind of wave motion from going through my own healing and then popping up and being able to share and talk to others and help others, and you know, kind of dipping back into my own sort of inner realm and doing a little bit of work there and then coming back out. And every time I come back out, there's a new perspective that comes out, and it's so helpful. And yeah, I feel really grateful that that's kind of the way it works, because anytime I feel done, I feel really dead inside because it's like somewhere I'm stagnating in some way. Because like I see it a little bit like you do too, that, you know, I mean, at this point, I definitely know, that's one thing I know, that I'm not done. So that kind of sort of, um, yeah, being ignited in terms of like, you know, getting sort of dipped into the healing fire, and then being also ignited into sharing the things that are, you know, becoming clear in my mind, and you know, sharing about the shedding of stuff that's just not helpful anymore. And yeah, it does seem like we keep talking about the same thing over and over, but that just seems to be the way the mind needs it, doesn't it? Like, you know, I'm coming from a Course in Miracles background, and I mean, there's pretty much one thought that gets shared over and over and over on like 600, 700 pages in different ways, because the mind is so resistant to hearing it, and to, you know, there are so many layers that need to be burned off and shed, so that the teaching really can become embodied and true knowledge, that really that wisdom from the spirit, something not of this world at all. But yeah, it does seem to take those kind of onion layers shedding away so that the truth can really dawn on the mind.
I was listening to an earlier podcast that you and Elizabeth did, and you had said that you felt like you didn't really know anything, but you could share your experience. And that really resonated for me, in that I feel like I don't know anything, but really all I have to do is share my experience and hope that for somebody else it will have meaning. Um, and and that led me even deeper into thinking about my place in the cosmos, which is sort of my trap that I fall into. I like the big picture, but you know, the fact that we're sitting here, when you give the time that the known universe has existed, at least 13 billion years, and the infinite number of planets and solar systems, and all that's gone on before and will go on after me. And here I am sitting with the two of you at this table thinking about these things. And I go, wow, what could it all mean for me? And it occurred to me after sitting with the idea that all I can do is share my own experience, hopefully without judgment, without teaching or preaching. That for me opens up the requirement to be as authentic as I can be, because there can only be one of each of us in this place and time. And as I see it, my job is to be as fully me as I can be. And that's it. I can't say, well, it'll be good or bad, whether anybody will gain from it, lose from it. But it's such a miracle that we're sitting here with consciousness, knowing what we're supposedly doing, looking for answers, looking for inspiration, looking for guidance. It's so grand that what else can we do but just be ourselves? And yeah, that's pretty much what it boils down to me right now. And in some ways, it makes it pretty simple, because when I come up against any kind of rub, I can say, oh, is this serving me, or is it real? Is it really who I am? Do I need to do this? Am I people pleasing? Am I doing this, doing that? And then it gets easier and easier. And part of that comes with age. So you all have that to look forward to. But yeah, and I'm happy to be here in this moment and in this instant with the two of you.
John and I have had a very dynamic dance with lots of different seeming hats we've worn and lots of different ways that we've related. And, the idea of reflections for our mind as being a necessary part of the transformation process is really present for me. And, like most humans, I'm sure John and I came to our relationship with lots of judgments about the world and about each other and about what we thought we would get and do and all that kind of stuff. And, John speaks about his journey in a different way than I do. And often what he shares will rub me the wrong way. And often what I share rubs him the wrong way. And it's the beauty of the relationship. For me, when I hear anybody talk about their authentic self, it gets my hackles up. It's like it makes me a little nuts. And, because for me, it's like, where am I still in a story about a me? That's how I hear it, with my judgments still in my mind, And so, wow, what a gift. Like right now, I can feel the healing of the spirit going, like, deeply meditate on this concept, Elizabeth, and, for me, it's like and maybe we're saying the same thing, right? Language is always a potential barrier. The way that we think we're being communicative is always the challenge, right? If we're not in a shared purpose, I may not hear what John's really saying, right? So for me, it's like the fire is right here with this idea of an authentic self. It's kind of a catchphrase now for a lot of people. And for me, the authentic self is spirit moving through me. And that's the only authentic self. And John and I actually met in a container of painting from the source, letting the spirit move through you to paint, getting out of the way. So for me, that is my calling in my heart, is to be dismantled to where the idea of an authentic self isn't even an idea in my mind, So thank you for the way that you shared it, because it brought forth in my own mind the way I look at it and the way I view it and the way that it may still not be really properly integrated in my mind. That's the gift of relationship, or these reflections of a part of my mind that's unhealed, a part of my mind that's still questioning, oh yeah, authentic self. Oh yeah, that sounds good. Oh, no judgment. It's like, it makes me really stop and drop in and go like, that doesn't feel right to me. Is it not feeling right because it's not my alignment with spirit? Or is it not right because I have a judgment, or I have an axe to grind, or I have an emotional attachment to my view? Like, who knows, right? But that's the cauldron of relationship, back to you to opening with the fire. It gets, it gets hot, it gets really hot. And John and I, we had a little ceremony last night, unknown to us, coming on, with a conversation that we had about something that was brought to him in his life that had to do with some people that brought in this big healing container, and very transformative, very powerful. It shows up when it shows up, how it shows up. And, I was doing my dance of being moved by spirit. And by the end, he said, I need to go take a shower because I'm all sweaty and pitted out, these relationship dynamics are where we're going to see ourselves. And it is a potent purification container if you use it that way. Maybe, at times in our life, we weren't using it for a clear understanding of our healing. Maybe we're just grinding axes and shoveling resentments and trying to be right and you're wrong and all that kind of nonsense. But we've learned over time that it unwinds us. We had a saying in the early, we did this thing called Nap Time News where we would discuss what was in our minds. And there was this thing of saying we're peeps, little birds untying knots, like birds go and make their nests and they ravel everything up. Well, we were trying to unravel those threads. And this is kind of how you do it. It's like, oh, I don't really vibe with what you're saying right now. Can you be in that? Can you be in that and still have love in your heart? Can you have a disagreement with somebody about anything and still respect them? Yes. John and I are reverently irreverent with each other at this point. We poke each other, we prod each other, we show each other our crap, our nonsense, and it is such a blessing.
Sometimes I like to call Elizabeth the bazooka.
That's awesome.
maybe a little too much detail there, but yeah, no, and that's another whole thing of contemplation is, typically a spiritual journey. The idea was maybe you went off into a cave or the mountains and did this solo thing and lived like a hermit and stuff. But for me, the real beauty of a journey has been being in a relationship with someone who has the same intention or has an intention to be on this journey and find ways to make space for the differences, because there are a lot of differences and there are a lot of times when it's not water, it's fire. And I think if there's not some real love and respect in the relationship, it would be hard to hold that container. But if you can hold that container, miracles can happen.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I love that the relationship topic's coming up, because I just had a surprise sort of emergency call with a friend last night who needed some help, because she's finding herself in a sort of new collaboration relationship with somebody. And last night things were kind of intense because both of them shared a bunch of stuff, and they had like even a third person there to sort of, what's like as a mediator a little bit. And but she still didn't feel really settled once everything was said and done. So we joined a little bit, and yeah, the spirit through me just kept saying, like, because she wanted to sort of like say, like, well, this is effed now and I probably should just leave. I need to just run away from this, because how is anybody supposed to deal with this? And I just kept reminding her that the two of you have likely agreed to heal together for whatever time frame, and so you're bringing the spirit into this relationship and this collaboration. So it's not surprising at all that stuff's coming up, that you're reflecting stuff for him and he's reflecting stuff for you. Like, that's the whole point of relationships that are being used for spiritual awakening, for transformation. If nothing's coming up, you could say something's going wrong. So yeah, I think we often talk about relationships, and it's only normal that it keeps coming up, because so much stuff gets shown to us in these relationships that we seem to be given by the spirit for our own healing and transformation. These are the most powerful places where we can heal. And like you said, John, like, yeah, it used to be that you go up in the monastery and you become a hermit and you just meditate and you're silent for 30 years. And then it seems like perhaps you wake up. But it seems like more and more there's maybe a bit more of an accelerated path to awakening. And that's through these amazing relationships that we're given. And I know when I came together with you, Elizabeth, both times, it seemed like it was like two chunks at a time, or like one chunk, and then I went away and then came back. And both times were really transformative for me in their own ways. And yeah, that's just because the prayer's underneath there to be shown and to not hide from the light, and yeah, to let all of the darkness be transformed into light.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, deeply healing for me as well. And as you were talking about the monastery concept, I was having one of the very famous Rinpoches. He was talking in a talk a few years ago that I listened to, and he was saying how difficult it is for them now in a lot of these Buddhist monasteries with the young monks, because he said it's such a different world now in terms of how they operate within the monasteries, and the influence of any other cultures, but social media, this and that. He said we don't know what to do, because we've got these young men who are seeing young women out in social media, even though they're in their monastery, and they're having all of these mental and emotional issues that might have been dealt with very differently, 100 years ago. And he said they don't have any reference point for these relationship issues or these inner, lust and longing and, all the stuff that does come with these external differences, seemingly external differences. Is that we don't know how to deal with helping them. Like it's a real, like a serious issue for them, and it kind of points to that thing you were saying, both of you were saying, of these seeming symbols outside of ourselves are going to show us where the healing is to be found. And if you're somebody that's reincarnated for a million lifetimes as a monk and you never faced, oh, I got sexual thoughts, I got sexual longings, I've got, rageful thoughts about, the guy that's out in the world with a hot chick, but here I am sitting on my cushion, right? It's like, it's all the fire. It's all there for that transformation. But, even the guy that's been a monk lifetime after lifetime, you say, oh, that's good for you. You're spiritually advanced. Well, maybe not. Maybe you haven't dealt with some of those things, right? And for me, I feel like I did lots of lifetimes in monasteries. This was not the one for that, because I couldn't find parts of my mind being in the yoga center, right? I couldn't stay in that one path for me, for my healing, and not deal with these other relationship dynamics. You said something about in your early days of the course, thinking, oh, well, I'm not the body, so I don't need to have any physical intimacy. That's a great place to hide out. Yeah, I saw lots of people in the yoga center hiding out around their sexual issues, right? You can't wake up and go home and be completely in your divine oneness with any of that garbage still hanging around. Right? I mean, it's got to be looked at, transformed, felt. So anyway, it just, yeah, there's no going off to the mountaintop for me this lifetime, but boy, oh boy, I fantasized about it almost every day at times,
Just sitting in the energy of this conversation is pretty powerful, and it's interesting to have the disembodied voice of Yuta sort of sitting over the over the microphone and screen, because it adds, it gives a different dynamic to how the energy flows. But this is my first time with you too, and I had not imagined that it could feel like spirit moving through in a format like this. And just sitting here, yeah, my heart feels more opened, and yeah, it's beautiful.
I love that. That's what happens to me always too. Because I was, before we got on this, I said to Elizabeth, I feel like I'm wearing a metal helmet today. And just the feeling that I had was that I couldn't access anything. I couldn't really hear the spirit. I couldn't, like, I was looking at tarot cards and oracle cards, and it was just, none of it felt right. And yeah, and just coming on together, and yeah, coming into the space where we do want to sort of be a channel for the spirit, I do feel better as well. And I'm not sure I'm still wearing a metal helmet.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I love the way you started it, Yuta, with the bonfire. You know, John and I were talking about that the other night when we had invited him to do the talk. You know, there's that primal kind of energy of sitting around the campfire that is so vital. And we so know in our hearts that we are one. We so know it. And yet the mind stuff, the personality stuff has led us all to believe that we're these little separate units running around. And so when we come, as you said, John, when we come into this space of communion with our fellows, with the spirit, it's like the most natural thing in the world.
Mm.
It's everything. It's just like, it's really what I like to do all the time. Like to be, you know, at the fire every minute of my day.
Yeah. It's nice when you get to the place around the fire where you're starting to, you know, roast marshmallows and really enjoy your time around it versus feeling like, oh my God, this is too hot. I don't like it. My eyes are burning. I can't get far enough away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think more and more it does feel like that to me, in, you know, versus sort of like the beginning stages of my journey, where things were just very intense very often. And it seemed like, you know, my journey really kicked off when I joined a spiritual community, so I had so many relationships to deal with all the time because there was plenty of people around me all the time. And yeah, just navigating those new sort of relationships and connections was so intense in the beginning. And it seems like, yeah, there's like, I can feel like within myself there is a transformation that has taken place that allows me to connect so much easier and without all this crap in my head that, you know, would come in front of me basically and start operating without me being even really aware of it, and just interrupting communication and mishearing things. And just, yeah, like we talked about this before, like listening through all these filters to all the people that were around me and making things so difficult. And it just seems like more and more there's not those filters anymore, and I can hear a lot more clearly. And so it does feel like things do get a lot more enjoyable along the way of this transformation journey.
Mm.
And maybe that's a nice place to finish up.
Feels right.
If you guys have any last closing comments?
That's been very nice for me, and thank you both for inviting me in, and I hope I'll get invited back.
Great having you.
Yeah, thank you. Lovely new dynamic. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining us for this new endeavor. And yeah, enjoy your day. Thank you.
Have a great day.
Lots of love.